If you're alone right now, don't watch this in the dark. At 3:12 a.m., deep in the forest, our fire suddenly went out. We thought it was the wind, until the camera captured this. Look behind the trees. Did you see that? That's when my friend whispered, "Something is standing behind you." What happened next made us leave everything behind and run. My parents never fought. They had disagreements, sure, but they weren't the kind of people to express it in an unpleasant way. They were kind people, a little reserved, but in a Midwestern kind of way. With that said, there was one time in my childhood when they did not hold back and I wasn't supposed to hear it. It was almost 2 a.m. I was sick with the flu and I had to get up over and over to blow my nose. It was awful, but my mom got me a Turtles comic book that I had been reading religiously. It's amazing how little it takes to turn something awful into an adventure at that age. I got up and headed for the bathroom after another bout of sneezing when I heard loud voices coming from the kitchen. It was unusual. I had never heard them talk like that before. My dad had just didn't get angry. "We can't pretend like nothing's going to happen," he said. "We can't send him out unprepared." "What? So you're suggesting that we drop this on him here and now? You think it's better to have him live his entire life in fear?" "Well, I think it's better for him to have a goddamn life to begin with." Dad was furious. His eyes were red. Had he been crying? Mom sat at the dinner table covering her face with her hands. She couldn't stop sobbing. I had seen her cry at the movies a couple of times, but never like this. "Maybe it stops with us," she sighed. "Have you considered that maybe this is it? Have you considered the alternative?" Dad sat down across from her, taking her hands in his. "We don't have to make his entire life about it. We don't. But can we please discover more software, TV and video equipment, YouTube, transcript tool, just agree to not leave him in the dark?" "What are you going to do?" "I'll figure something out. I promise." They sat there for a full 10 minutes looking at one another. I never heard the full conversation, but the next day I was told that my grandparents had died. They were 63 and 65 years old, and they died at the same time. No one told me what happened. I didn't think much about that night until many years later. Both of them on the same day, just like my grandparents. I didn't get the full details, just an uncomfortable phone call from a police officer. Even as an adult, you never really expect your parents to die. Sure, you know that it'll happen eventually, but it hurts you in a way that you wouldn't know. You can't prepare yourself for those great pains of the human experience. And if it didn't hurt, well, then you probably had enough pain as is. I was an only child, so there was nobody to call but distant cousins and uncles. People that I hadn't seen for years. Among the flurry of funeral bills and condolences, I almost forgot to check what they had left behind. It wasn't until weeks later, while browsing their belongings, that I found a peculiar box. One with a note attached along with my name. It was my mother's handwriting. "Please read." I brought it into the kitchen and I turned on the light. It was just a shoebox, but it was taped up well and good. I cut the side open and I bent the cardboard only to reveal a couple of papers along with a handful of jars. "If you're reading this," then we passed on. One of the papers read, "If it happened before our time, chances are something did this to us. Something we hoped would never happen. Chances are that this ends with us. But just to prepare you for the possibility that it does end, we want you to consider these steps when the time comes. 1. Light a fire. 2. Burn the myrrh. 3. Stay by the fire. You wouldn't know the day. Please don't go looking for it. It'll be in plain sight. The myrrh is the sticky resin in one of the jars. There should be enough to last you for a night. The less you know, the better. We had prayed every night since you were born that this would not come to pass. But if it does, you must promise to be safe. Light a fire, burn the myrrh, and please, my most darling boy, stay by the fire." I didn't even notice my tears until they touched the paper. There is no doubt in my mind that my mom had written that. She had always called me that. Her most darling boy. Something in my mind brought me back to that one night when I was younger where they sat by the table. If only I had asked them about it. Over time, all their belongings were put into storage. I thought a lot about that letter and what day they talked about. I trusted that I would know it when I saw it. But There was also that uneasy feeling that I was missing something. They were talking to the boy that they knew. The adult me was a completely different person. I might miss something that a younger me wouldn't. Then again, I don't know. After a while, my paranoia faded into the background. I had inherited my parents' house in the outskirts of a small town in rural South Dakota. I had a job at the local hardware store and made some extra money on the side shipping stuff online. It wasn't glamorous, and I knew for a fact that the delivery guy was getting tired of dropping stuff off at my place. But everybody has to make a living. I still kept the mirror in the living room right next to the fireplace. I kept the note in the drawer, and I knew the words by heart. Life was pretty simple, light a fire, in a way that suited me just fine. Stay by the Saturday in late April. My darling boy. The sun was setting outside. Hey. A voice called out. I need to talk to you. I didn't get a lot of visitors, but I knew most folks around town. I opened the front door without a second thought. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. There was a woman there. She was a couple of years older than me, but I had seen her around town. I think she worked at the flower shop. They had those weird blue sunflowers in the window. I saw them every morning when I drove to work. She had these dark eyes and short curly hair. Her skin was about the same shade as the wood of her shotgun. Yeah, a shotgun. My eyes locked on the gun so hard that it took me a skipped heartbeat to notice what else she had brought. There was debris on the ground. Something that looked like a smashed chair and sheets of plywood. Some kind of impromptu bonfire. She had this wild look on her face, and I could tell that she was stressed. This is the day, right? She said. This is it. Isn't it? What day? What are you? I took a moment to collect myself. Why do you have a gun? He told me to bring it. Bring the gun. Meet by the easternmost house. Light the fire. And burn the myrrh. I added. And stay by the fire. Myrrh? She scoffed. What do you mean myrrh? She lit up the bonfire with a frown. She looked exhausted. She pulled out a camping chair from a backpack that she had brought and sat down, dropping a pack of marshmallows on the ground. I went inside and threw my firewood into the fireplace. My hand was shaking so bad that I accidentally pinched a finger. I got a couple of splinters, too. I just threw it all in there, spritzed some fire starter on it, and lit a handful of matches. Another frown. The heat burned into my eyes as if telling me to slow down. I grabbed a handful of myrrh from the jar and I threw it into the fire. As I was about to close the jar, it slipped from my hands. Trying to catch it just made it worse. I ended up spilling it all over my fancy lunch shirt. I let out a squeal that the lady outside must have heard. She said something, but I couldn't hear what. I ended up opening the living room window, letting out some of the smell. The myrrh isn't very pleasant. It's like burning wet mushrooms. I had a clear view of her from there. You all right in there? She asked. I just lit the fire and dropped something, I said. And what was that about myrrh? They told me to burn it. They said that it'll help. So you weren't told to go here. You were told something else. Well, I live here, I said. They just said light a fire, burn the myrrh, and stay by the fire. Yeah, she nodded. Bring a gun. Go east. Light the fire. Stay by the fire. You know what you're supposed to do with that thing? If your dad uses his final will to tell you to bring a shotgun, well, you bring a shotgun. His will. We took a step back and started from the beginning. Her name was Marilyn. She was 4 years older than me. Turns out that her dad had died on the same day as my parents. In his will, he had left something similar to what I got. But the instructions were slightly different. Marilyn had been told to bring a gun and to head to the easternmost house. There, she would light a fire and stay by it. There were a couple of things that we had in common. Our parents were roughly the same age and from the same area. Vastly different lives and jobs, though. But the fact that her dad and my parents passed on the same day couldn't be a coincidence. I ended up sitting on the windowsill, 1 foot out the window. The flames in the fireplace flickered back and forth, licking away at the wood. The sun was almost completely gone, bathing the flat countryside in long, cutting shadows. I offered Marilyn to come inside, but she wasn't sure if that was allowed. She was supposed to light a fire and stay by it. It didn't say whether she could stay by someone else's fire. and she wasn't taking any chances. I ended up sharing my experience with her. I told her about that night when I was a kid and watching my parents have their first real secret argument. Marilyn nodded, letting the shotgun rest on her lap. My dad did that too right after my grandmother passed. He was up all night talking to his brother on the phone. Never heard him like that before. Marilyn had a husband and 3 kids, but she didn't want to get them involved. She figured that whatever asked her to bring a shotgun to a stranger's house might be better left unspoken. So, instead, we sat there talking about some of the most unsettling memories of our loved ones. Marilyn was the first to state the obvious. "I think something killed them," she said. "And I think it killed my grandmother, too." "That sounds like it. But why would it come for us?" "I don't know," she shrugged. "But it didn't sound like it was supposed to come for our parents, either. But it did." "But why today?" I asked. "How'd you figure out today was the day?" She looked off into the distance as she pierced another marshmallow with a thin metal rod. The bonfire was as lively as ever, reaching high into the air. "My dad used to sing me this song when I was a kid. You know, Bob Marley?" "Yeah, sure, yeah. 'Three Little Birds,' that was his favorite song. He sang it to me every night, come hell or high water. He'd sing that song and tuck me in. I've heard every cover of that song by every singer that I can imagine for as long as I can imagine it. And you know what I woke up to today?" She raised the marshmallow to her eyes, inspecting it. It was burned, but still good. There were 3 dead little birds outside my doorstep. She looked up at me, the fire shimmering in her wet eyes. And I knew, I felt that cold. And I don't doubt for a second that today is that day. I looked back at my fire. I threw on a little more myrrh and I believed her. Couple of hours passed. I sat by the window trying to keep myself occupied. Marilyn was watching something on her phone. I took down a hip flask of whiskey from my liquor shelf. I'm not much of a drinker, but I figured it was as good a day to start as any. Marilyn indulged in a vice of her own, lighting a cigarette. She had quit about a decade ago when she had her first kid, but she figured tonight was a special kind of wrong, the kind that didn't really count. It was almost 9 p.m. when I looked up and noticed something in the distance. Far out across the field, there was something bright. Looking a little closer, I could tell that it was a fire. I pointed it out to Marilyn. "It looks like there's more of us," I said. "You see who it is?" "I barely see the fire." "You sure it ain't a car?" "That cars don't flicker." She rolled her eyes at me and got up. She took a few steps away from the fire and called out at the top of her lungs. "Hey!" she yelled. "You staying by the fire?" Somebody called back from across the field. I didn't understand a word. Marilyn tried again, but slower. "You staying by the fire?" One word back, one syllable. Sounded like a yes. By 10 p.m., there were 2 more fires across the fields, making us 5 people in total. None of the others came to the house, and they all kept their distance from one another.